10 wins, 18 podiums, and Max Verstappen is world champion. But it wasn't without controversy. Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast. My name is Sam, and we're here for an Abu Dhabi race review, last race of the season. And it all built up to a massive moment, and that moment happened. It wasn't on track, though. It looks like it might happen in the courts. But anyway, I'm going to be joined by my great two co-hosts, it's Josh Bacon and Joe Roberts. How are you two doing?
Could be better, Sam, but I'm cheered up with the fact that you've done your best intro and you've said it to the end of the season. So, yeah, nice for that to happen.
Yeah, it's the only thing positive today, Sam.
Thank you guys. I appreciate the praise, but we're here for, as I said, an Abu Dhabi review. Lots of controversy. First of all, without going into too much detail about what went wrong, what were your general thoughts on the race?
Speechless, and yeah, without getting too into it, I thought it was kind of disgrace of what happened at the end for basically F1.
If we forget about the last few laps before the safety car, the race was actually quite interesting. They made it quite entertaining, and it seemed as it would be a cruising victory for Mercedes because the car just looked that much faster than Red Bull. Then we include the last 5 or so laps, and it's just made the sport look a bit stupid. So yeah.
Right, yeah, it was it was certainly an interesting race at the last few laps, but let's go back to where this all began, and that's on Saturday. We had Hamilton, heavy favourite, to put his car on pole, but we ended up with Max on pole position after a tow from Perez. He then returned the favourite and towed Perez. Mercedes stuck to what they normally do, where they switch every weekend. He goes up first. They don't tow each other. My question to you guys is, because Max put his car on pole and was he aborted his second lap in Q3 because he knew he had so much of a gap. So my question to you guys is, why did Lewis and Bottas not do a tow? Why did Mercedes not do that when they saw that the Red Bull was gaining so much time from it?
I feel like Lewis doesn't like having a tow. I feel like he prefers to have a clear track in front of him where it's just him and the car, and it's just down to his pure ability and what he can get out of the car instead of a tow. I'm sure maybe Mercedes were like questioning it or asking him if he wanted it, but I think it's more down to his decision that he doesn't want it and he just prefers to have a clear track in front of him.
Yeah, I agree with Josh, but I also think even if Hamilton did get the tow, I don't think it would have improved. I remember listening to the radio that Max was like a tenth up on his time, even through having that slipstream. So Max would have always got pole, in my opinion.
It was a very dominant session from Verstappen, despite the fact that Hamilton looked heavy favourite, and it was very impressive. And then we go into the race, and Hamilton had a much better start. We start on lap 1. His reaction time was a whole 10th quicker, and Lewis went into first place after an excellent start. And our first flashpoint happens at turn 7, where we had Max diving down the inside, Hamilton having to go through the runoff area and came out in front. Red Bull felt very aggrieved by this, and the stewards felt that no action needed to be taken because of the fact that they felt Hamilton gave time back on the straights. I want to know what you guys made of that decision.
I thought it was a dive bomb for Max Verstappen. Personally, I thought it was very far back, and kind of did what he did in Saudi Arabia, but kept it on the track. I part of me does think they should have given the place back, but I think again, coming to conclude that I seeing it back, I personally think that Hamilton should have gave him more time. I don't think turning it around would have done anything, but I would just say maybe chop a bit more time off that Max Verstappen lost.
Yeah, it was definitely a late lunge from Max, and I think Lewis chose to go off was if he broke and then tried to stay on the track and stay behind Verstappen, he probably would have lost the place to Perez as well. So he probably took the risk of going further on, and he probably thought he would have to get the position back, which is only one rather than two. But for some reason, the FIA or the stewards thought that he gave enough time, but it didn't look like he gave enough time back. So I think he should have definitely given the place back to Verstappen in that one.
Yeah, I probably agree with you that he should have given the place back. Admittedly, the move was quite a bit of a dive bomb, but he did keep it on track, so it was kind of a fair move. It's an interesting one because all the former drivers, all the Sky pundits, you had Rosberg, you had Button, you have Damon Hill, you have Martin Brundle, they all felt that the place should have been given back. And they watched so many replays and they still felt that. And I think I would agree with them. And it'd be interesting to if he did give it back, what the end race result be, whether the roles were reversed of what happened at the end of the race. But let's now move on to, there was a few DNFs, which I'll run you through. First of all, Kimi Räikkönen. Oh, heartbreak. Last race in Formula One, lap 28. And he hits the wall with brake issues and then brings it home into the garage and just retires. What a shame. For someone who is an F1, he goes down F1 history. He's raced more races in the sport than anyone else. Fernando Alonso next season will probably break that record, but for now, it's an incredible record. He won a world title, and then for him to end his F1 career like that, it was very sad, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, sorry, Josh. I think I didn't. The sad thing is I didn't like the Kimi at the beginning, the start of, well, when I started watching, because he was in the Ferrari and I just didn't like it. And then it went to Lotus and then back to Ferrari. But I think Kimi has an amazing career. I think kind of what happened at the end, kind of even like going, I think we're going to talk about Russell and Giovinazzi. I kind of lost what I think should have been a very good farewell for him. Obviously, I don't think he really cares that much because he wants to be with his family. But I think Raikkonen is one of the greats. I wouldn't say in the top, like maybe you put in the top 10 in world champions, but I think it's just his humor, his one-line puns that you get out of him, I think kind of got clouded by what happened at the end. And yeah, I think that's the one reason, as you said, is a very, very sad end to the race.
Yeah, it is sad, and it's not the way you probably want to go out of your F1 career. But I'm not gonna lie, I think I kind of thought it would happen because of how the season's been going for Alfa Romeo. Because I think even Gio retired as well, so both of their cars didn't even finish the race. But it's sad. It is sad, but I think he doesn't care. He was like, doesn't really care what happens now. He's finished. He's going home with his family. But if I was his wife, I'd be like, thank goodness for that, because he now can't die. He can't die from a crash anymore, which is good for them. But yeah, not the best way to end. And he's had a really good career, and I think he'll be happy with what he's done. And I think he's definitely glad that he's finally out of the sport.
It wouldn't surprise me if after a year of being home, he gets bored and goes into rally or something, because that's the kind of driver he does love the sport. But it was a day to forget for a lot of the people moving teams. It was really sad because then we had Russell on the same lap, retired with gearbox issues. A few laps later, Giovinazzi, as you said, broke down to the side of the track, causing a VSC. It kind of made things interesting then, because you had Verstappen pitting, and we were both saying, Josh, in the chat, that Hamilton should have probably come in. But then on reflection, if you ignore after the end of the race, Verstappen wasn't gaining enough time. It probably ended up being a smart decision for them. But another driver I feel bad for is Giovinazzi, because both the Alfa Romeos breaking down in their last races in the sport. Giovinazzi, there's a bit of room to come back, but realistically, this is his last race in Formula One. It's very unlikely. They'll most likely look at a rookie, because there's been times when excellent drivers have left the sport and because they've left, they haven't gone back to him, aka Nico Hulkenberg, hashtag bring back Hulkenberg. But it was a sad one. And then now let's move on to the flashpoint, the big controversial moment. And it all came from the king, Nicholas Latifi, losing it at turn 14. A lot of drivers have done this over the weekend. Let's not all be like, Latifi, you're an idiot. How can you do this? He just had a battle. He was on the dirty side of the track and he lost control of the car into turn 14, went into the wall, bringing out a safety car. And this safety car was probably the most dramatic safety car in F1 history. It really has to be said, because what has happened after the race is crazy. So first of all, it was said that no lapped cars were going to overtake. So there were about 5 cars between Lewis and Max. Max pitted and still came out second, but there were lapped cars in front of him. Mercedes were sitting pretty. They were fine. There were cars between them. Max was never going to overtake all of them and then get Lewis as well with 1 lap to go. But then Michael Masi decided to let 5 cars through, despite 8 cars being needing to unlap themselves. He let 5 cars through, the ones between Lewis and Max, leaving the 3 others behind. And I think it's fair to say Toto Wolff wasn't too happy about that decision. And it came down to the last lap. Max was on softs, which they were worn, but they're soft tires, and Lewis was on old hards. And of course, the first opportunity, Max took the position. I mean, Lewis didn't have DRS because DRS doesn't come in until 2 laps after. And Max was away, even though I think Lewis put up much more of a fight than a lot of drivers would have done. So what is the controversy? So first of all, Mercedes lodged 2 protests today saying that the FIA did not follow their own regulation, which were both rejected but have since been appealed. And now we're going to get into regulation. Didn't think I'd be doing this on the podcast, but the first protest they had was in relation to Article 48.8, which said when safe to do so, lapped cars may now overtake. And then at the end says, once the last lapped car has passed the leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. And then the second part was 48.12, which said, with the exception of the cases listed under A to H below, no driver may overtake another car on the track, including the safety car, until he passes the line for the first time after the safety car has returned to the pits. There is definitely an argument, and quite a strong argument, that both of these rules were broken. And I know Joe especially is very aggrieved by this, and I am not very happy with it either. And I will give my opinion after, but first of all, I want to hear what you two think.
Josh, do you want to hear the long rant? Or do you want to...
Shall we get the short rant out first?
Go on, Josh.
I think yours is going to be quite long. If we talk about the second one, the overtaking before the safety car, I think the ruling that happened with that one, I think is fair, because I think Lewis was backing him up extremely slowly, like slower than usual, and they were both going on and off the throttle like constantly. So I think it was too hard to judge when he wasn't going to accelerate or brake. So I think for that one, if he got a penalty for that, I think it would have been harsh on Verstappen. So I think that one, fair enough, nothing can happen. But then you get to the second one, and if you read all the little details on the FIA's document or whatever it's called, there's so many words wrong in that. It just causes such a big debate. It just causes it causes a debate that shouldn't be a debate. They should make the rules so much more clear than they are. It just puts pressure on themselves and others. And for what I'm talking about is the word any. They say they can let any lapped cars pass. And to change that from any to all, because then there wouldn't be an issue. Because the reason I think it wasn't given to Mercedes side, it was because Red Bull argued saying you can do any cars. It doesn't say all lap cars. So 5 could have gone through and the 3 could have stayed. It didn't say anything about the 8. So I think that's why the appeal was denied at this stage. But I'll let Joe go on to talk about what can happen next. But yeah, if I just stick to those two rules that were discussed after the race, I think one was justified and the other one is not over yet.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think the first one I've got to go on to is the safety car. I've always had this opinion. It's F1. It's not NASCAR. I don't even believe you should even be able to go side by side with another car on the safety car restart, as it just could have caused more crashes, and it's just going to end up causing mayhem, and also this controversy with Mercedes appealing, obviously filing a complaint to the FIA about it, and it just doesn't. That for me is just a rule the FIA for me have got completely wrong. I watched the Sky post race, and they said, I think Ted Kravitz said that that rule is interpreted by all motorsport. So it means it is interpreted by NASCAR, IndyCar, like touring cars. It's basically any. And I know for a fact watching touring car and NASCAR and IndyCar, you can go side by side. So then the reason it was given is because they probably did it in terms of an IndyCar or a NASCAR context when they allowed to go side by side. So for me, that needs regulation, needs changing. Go on to the second one, which even if it was on like Lewis Hamilton being in the like opposite position, I would understand why Red Bull are aggrieved if it happened to them, because it is Michael Masi, I think, needs to be fired, sacked. The FIA need a really good look at themselves this season in terms of decision making. There are very good arguments that Michael Masi should have been sacked at Hungary for that appalling decision where Bottas got a 5 place grid penalty, where he basically took 6 cars out, and then and then Michael Masi's basically just a joke. Then you have to go into the thick of all the details, all the appeal process, and I remember saying to Josh, I said last week, this is going to go to courts. It's why I put my prediction Norris would win the race, because I thought Max would do a Prost Senna scenario, and it's kind of happened, but in the opposite way, whereas it's the FIA doing it, and it's kind of, I think, kind of disgraceful for the sport to do this, because it isn't going to get people interested in the sport. It's going to become a joke. The only people that will actually like this decision are Max fans, not the general F1 fan base that just want to watch a good show, a good season. Yes, people can argue I'm a Lewis fan, but at the end of the day, you have to look at it from a subjective point of view of what decision that should have happened, and it should have been finished under safety car. I know, as Sam's probably going to mention, and he's going to say that in the report of the what's it called? The second appeal, where obviously the controversy happened. It says that the director has the authority. I don't think Michael Masi in that position had the authority. I think Red Bull basically pushed the button way too much, and I think we're going to probably talk about it a bit more. I think the FIA need to close the pocket between the teams and the FIA and only do it for certain scenarios. And yeah, at the end of the day, this is going to go to the sport of arbitration. It's going to get messy. This guy that the Mercedes employed has basically, I think, won most of his rulings. I think he got MasterCard to play over the biggest amount in UK history. So it is this man is serious, and the sport of arbitrations oversees the whole of FIA. So it could get very nasty in that scenario.
Yeah, it's really tough because Max Verstappen has been superb this season. I really want to emphasize this. Max Verstappen has been fantastic. He has been dominant for a lot of it. Lewis has also been amazing. Both these drivers, whoever won this, deserved to win it in an amazing way. And the FIA have taken that away. The FIA have ruined that.
So I think, honestly, I think people cannot argue, as in people like Lewis fans, mega fans, and then that hate Max Verstappen will go, oh, well, for me, it should go down on track and not through the courts. If Max won this race, yes, I don't want him to win, but I would accept it and move on. But the fact is that it's happened in this way is a bit, I think, disheartening. Even if it was got the opposite way around, I would say that Max should have won it. Yes, Max Verstappen's a phenomenal driver and will win a world championship. Obviously has, but I got an ultimate feeling that this is going to go in Mercedes' favor, just due to the fact of the evidence that they have. And yeah, I think this is going to be quite a hard break if it goes the wrong way. Well, no, sorry, not the wrong way, but the wrong way for Max.
Yeah, it's certainly not over. And I think that our friend Archie put it best, that Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have taken the sports to new heights. Their rivalry will go down over a season as one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. And the FIA have dragged it back down, have dragged the sport back down. I think they were disgraceful. There's been no consistent. This isn't just today. Over the season, there's been no consistency. There's been no transparency. They don't follow the rules that they create, and I'm not really sure how they can be allowed to do this. They're basically run by Netflix at this point. Oh, what's going to create the best storylines? Oh, let's just tell them, the cars aren't going to be able to unlap themselves, and then let half of them unlap themselves a bit last minute and then get the safety car in. Oh, that'll be a good storyline. Netflix will have a field day there. It's not really acceptable. It will go to the court of arbitration for sport. It has to be quite honest, because it's so unfortunate, because Max Verstappen deserves that title, but not like that. No one deserves that title like that. If Hamilton had won like that, if Hamilton had won in the same way, then I'd be saying the same thing. It's so frustrating because after an amazing season, we've had some amazing racing, we've had some fantastic drives, and people are going to look back on the season and just see FIA incompetence. The governing body of the sport are letting the sport down. I'm not calling for Michael Masi to be sacked, but he, over the winter break, he has got to look with the FIA and the stewards. at the rules and they've got to go, right, it's basically a massive grey area. We have to make this so much more black and white, because otherwise interpretation of the ruling and stuff like that, we can make this season in a way might be really beneficial for the sport in the future, because they will look at the season and go, right, that can never happen again. This is so bad that this has happened. Right, these are the changes that we need to put in place. Because if they don't, then I don't have much hope for the sport, because I love this sport and it's one of the best sports in the world. And when we see reel-to-reel racing, we love it. That's what we want to see. But at the moment, it's run by the FIA, who are unbelievably incompetent, and they really need to butt their ideas up. But where do they go? Where do we go from here? Is it? Do you think it would be fair to take away Max's title, even though he's done nothing wrong and he's probably deserved it over the season?
Yes, ultimately, yes. As in, I have this opinion that everything has to be like even football, F1, it has to be done the right way, and I don't think it is. As in, the FIA have mucked up hundreds of times. An example, like the Ferrari engine, for example, where Ferrari suddenly had, I don't know, like some sort of, I don't know, something happened with their engine. I think it was to do with how the oil was fusing with the engine. That wasn't disclosed to the public. That was disclosed in F1. That should have, whatever happened there should have been filed to the public, so then they can understand why Ferrari suddenly lost so much pace the season afterwards. And then the FIA, for me, have been kind of off the ball as ever since Charlie Whiting left. I think it's been the most, I would say, quite kind of inconsistent, blatantly bending their own rules to suit themselves, looking for entertainment rather than doing it properly. And I think this race, they're doing it for the championship rather than managing the race as Abu Dhabi. For me, they raced it as a season, which for Michael Masi's performance, and I would argue the whole FIA performance, as in John Todd is leaving, I think, that the head of FIA, I think it's a bad way for him to leave sport. And I think, yeah, it's there's a lot of things that need to change at the FIA, and they need to bring ex drivers in to sort this out.
Yeah, you asked the question there, Sam, is it fair to take this title away from Verstappen in this way? But then you look at the other way around and you say, is it fair that Lewis lost the title in this way? And then you just look back to FIA and say, it's your mess. You've then caused this debate of, is it fair for this driver? It's not fair for this driver, all because they can't stick to their rules. They can't make clear and concise decisions. And this is why we're having this discussion, because they're just not consistent. They mess up too much, and it just ruins the sport. It ruins the image of the sport. And I think what they've got to do this winter, like you said, if they don't sack him, they've got to at least all sit down together, go through all the mistakes they make, and just do what you say, but don't repeat it from now on. Rewrite the rules so it's clear, it's in black and white. There are no dodgy areas where people can try and get their way out of it with the lawyers that they obviously have, because they've got out of a few things this season. So it's just like going back to is it fair for Verstappen? No, it won't be fair if Mercedes next appeal does rule in their favour. It won't be fair for Verstappen, but it's the correct decision in a way, because they've messed up. So I think saying it's fair for one or the other, you can't really talk like that. It's just the mistake of the governing body has just ruined how it's ended and just made the whole season just seem kind of pointless.
Yeah, because if they don't clear up the rules, if they don't make it black and white, the sport will literally descend into chaos. If the rule makers aren't going to obey their own rules, why do the teams need to obey the rules? They're setting a bad example. You might as well just crash into everyone. Everyone might as well just like smack into each other, because what's the point? The rule makers don't care. Well, it's going to descend into chaos if they don't have a look at it. But hopefully this will end up being a positive. We'll look back and be like, that was the pivotal moment that the FIA got their act together, and it was positive for the sport. I see you shaking your head.
No, Sam, this is the thing. I know you probably weren't around. I don't know when you started watching F1, but there's been bigger controversy. There's been spy gating between Mclaren and Ferrari. That didn't get cleaned up very well. That was a bad image for McLaren. Then you got the crashing on purpose by PK toward Alonso the win in 2008. Then obviously you've got the Ferrari situation. There was one that then obviously you got even in 1990 between Senna and Prost. I think I don't think the FIA will change their spots on a number of scenarios or a number of rules, just because they, for me, are an organization which are very set in their ways and protect themselves. As in, they care about more their image than the sport that they're just showing for. As in, obviously they care for multiple sports, but F1 is the crown jewel that they don't want to make the image bad. But they just want to protect themselves, basically.
Yeah, I was just trying to look at it from a positive standpoint, because all they can do is improve it. It can't really get much worse. I mean, of course, there's been scandals over the year, but you'd hope that they will learn from this and come back stronger, ready for next season. But let's now move on to team by team breakdowns. We're starting Mercedes, Red Bull. I don't really think we've said a lot on how sort of Verstappen did as well as he could. Hamilton also did as well as he could to win. So a few words on Bottas and Perez, because Bottas's last race finished 6th, and then Perez DNFing. However, let's be real, Perez was superb. Can we just give that man some credit? He held up Lewis 8 seconds. That man is an animal.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, sorry, Josh.
Perez did an absolutely amazing job today. Just watching those 2 laps where you could obviously tell he wasn't going as fast as he could do, but the way he positioned that car to make sure that Lewis couldn't get anywhere was absolutely phenomenal. It was great to watch. Even as a fan wanting Lewis to win, it was still impressive and quite fun to watch Perez do what he did to reduce the gap to Hamilton and Verstappen. But it's a shame that it's DNF so close to the end as well. But obviously there was an issue with the car and the safety to him. But I'm sure he was much loved and much appreciated by everyone at the end of the race, especially Verstappen, because I think he's tweeted about him as well. So it was definitely very sportsmanship-like, a great teammate from him, which is what you expect from Checo, I think. But then looking at Bottas, it's just pretty much summed his season up, or maybe the last few seasons up with Mercedes and himself. Just can never really find the pace in the car that Lewis can, and struggles to overtake, because he was stuck behind Lando for quite a long time, where he just looked like in the car, he would just breeze past, but he just couldn't. So I think this race just summed up Bottas and how he's driven within the Mercedes in the last few seasons.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think Perez shown his true colours, and kind of shows that he can fight with Hamilton, and I'm hoping that he can have a go at him next season. There's some rumors circling around that I've seen that Lewis might retire at the end of the season. Might talk about that a bit more at the end of the podcast. But yeah, Perez, very good drive, very impressive, and I think I've been critical of him. Me and Josh have been critical of him. Don't know. I think Robert has as well a bit. But yeah, he's showing that he's the form to that he should be in there and not Alex Albon.
Yeah, there's a few things with Perez because I've maintained all along. If you put sometimes he's not great in qualifying. He has been pretty inconsistent in qualifying, but if you look at tire preservation, if you look at race pace, if you look at racecraft, he is a fantastic driver. Admittedly, he doesn't always get it right on a Saturday, but on a Sunday, he will give it his all. And I think he's been a fantastic teammate to Verstappen because I said at the beginning of the season, if he gets fourth or fifth in a Red Bull second seat, I think he's had a good season, and he's come fourth, which is the best I think he could have done. I think he's had a fantastic season, and he did really well today. And it was interesting because I heard there's a few interesting rumors going around about why Perez retired, because a few cynical people think that there was nothing wrong with the car, and that because when he came in, Perez was saying, "Oh, why are we coming in?" and was like really confused by it. And apparently it was some issue with, like to do with water or something else. I don't quite remember it. And a few people think that Red Bull deliberately underfueled the car so he could give as much fight to Max as possible. I mean, I don't believe it, but I find it's an interesting theory. I quite like the controversy.
Is that against? I don't know. Obviously, we don't read the sporting regulations because I don't think we have any time. Maybe you, Sam. But
I'll read it all the time, mate. I just my nightly read.
Yeah, but I don't know. Is that against the regulations? I don't know. As in,
because he retired early, they'd never find him guilty of it.
Yeah, but then there's arguments saying why didn't Mercedes do that to Bottas?
I don't think it's happened, to be honest. I think it's just a theory. It's an interesting theory. I thought I'd bring it to the table because I thought it was quite fun. But let's move on to McLaren versus Ferrari. And it was basically the same story that's happened with McLaren and Ferrari all season. McLaren started so well, and then Ferrari got going, and it was like, wow. I said in the preview that I thought Ferrari were going to do very well because Binotto said before the weekend, we're really happy with our power units. We're going to put them on full power. We're going to get the max out of them. And one of them finished third, which is pretty crazy. To start with McLaren, Norris finishing 7th and Ricciardo finishing 12th. Ricciardo will be happy this season's over and just ready to restart the next one. And then Ferrari, Leclerc in 10th, and Sainz a fantastic third. So, guys, how do you reflect on the battle this weekend between McLaren and Ferrari?
It's just the same as it has been in the last few races, unfortunately. Ferrari have just managed to find that extra pace, that extra speed to power past McLaren in the final bit of the season, which is obviously annoying as a fan of McLaren, but fair play to them, and they deserve it because they've been the better team towards the end. But I think if Ricciardo found his feet in the team quicker, then it wouldn't have been as simple because he would have probably earned some more points earlier on in the season. But if we're talking about just this race, it was a great drive from Sainz and Leclerc, to be fair. They both had a great start, both getting past Norris. And then obviously just a mistake, I think, from Ferrari to pit Leclerc under the virtual safety car, because he just couldn't make it back up again. But in terms of Sainz, to me, he was my driver of the day, as I'll go on to speak about later, but he just put that car where it was needed and just kept pulling away from Lando and everyone else behind him and just didn't really put a foot wrong, which is great from him. And then, like I said in the chat with Lando, another puncture. there's something wrong with his driving style, or it's just getting really unlucky because again, a puncture from the curbs, I think it was. So, which is why he was, I think, 4th or 5th at the time, and then just fell down and managed to come back to 7th, which is better than he's done in the last few races because it's been 9th or 10th. So, a couple of places higher, but still a bit of disappointment towards the end. And then Ricciardo, I think he just shows his struggles through the season. Just couldn't quite get with the car. Hasn't quite learned how to control it. But I think he'll come back stronger next season with the new 2022 car. And it'd be good to see how Ferrari and McLaren go on next season and see if they can actually compete with Mercedes and Red Bull for the titles of championship. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to add. I think that the only thing you can add is looking forward to next season in a way, but there's a massive going on to control back to will this kind of thing happen again as in more and more teams get to the top? I believe there'll be 4 teams fighting for the championship next season personally, as in looking at the progress of McLaren and Ferrari. Maybe Alpine can sneak into that, but I think it's a bit too soon. But yeah, Ferrari looks strong, and they look strong this race. And Leclerc had a fantastic, for me, obviously pitted wrong, but had a fantastic race until the mistake by the team. And Sainz, as in, remember Bonotto saying a couple of seasons ago when Vettel was there that Leclerc was like the prodigy of every, basically Ferrari, basically in the next, they call the next like Schumacher in a way. And to Sainz to beat him, I think that's probably, I need to be very careful with my words, but like winning a championship in a way, because he I think in the beginning of the season didn't really get comfortable with the car. Then obviously as sort of growing through the season and getting above Leclerc Leclerc is a fantastic driver, and getting above him does take something. And also Norris, who had a fantastic start of the season that kind of dipped away a bit at the end. And then going on to McLaren, I think it's been a bit of a up and down, well, a very up season, and then suddenly he's gone, the last 6 races gone dipped down back to reality. And I've got to agree with you, Sam. I think Ricciardo's going to be thankful the season's over. He's going to Perth for his 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Oh, what's it called?
Quarantine.
So yeah, he's going to have fun over Christmas. And then Norris, again, it's quite sad, especially as a McLaren fan, to see him get. I think the season's got like 6 punches or something stupid. So yeah, it's just more points dropped for him. And I don't think I was on the podcast last week, but yeah, he should have had way more points. And the battle between Ferrari and McLaren should have been a lot closer than it was.
Yeah, no. Carlos Sainz, what a man. I mean, we're going to do a season review pod, but he's definitely my driver of the season. Coming 5th, he beat every car that wasn't a Mercedes or Red Bull. First time in the Ferrari, his first season there. He took a little while to adapt to McLaren, and he rocks up in Ferrari. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I recall seeing that they made sure the pedals were pretty much identical to McLaren, so he adapted easily. But yeah, what a season from him. Let's move on to the AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, Alpine battle, the midfield and Aston Martin, as we like to call it. I'm not gonna lie, going into this race, I was thinking AlphaTauri have no chance. Alpine have put way too much room in front, but they gave it a very good shot. with Gasly coming fifth and Yuki Tsunoda coming fourth. I'm going to talk a lot about him a bit later. But fifth and fourth for AlphaTauri. Alpine, Alonso in eighth, Ocon ninth, solid, and Aston Martin 11th and 13th, both outside the points. How do you reflect on this battle?
The AlphaTauri and the Alpine showed why they're being so competitive and close. And there's nothing much between them. I think I've been very critical of Tsunoda. I've called him the worst rookie, or no, second worst rookie behind Mazepin. But yeah, he's really improved. I think he's come along a bit. He's just slowly sharpening up that racecraft in order to become a better driver. And yeah, I think as a result that you can build on for next season, and obviously Gasly and being solid. I think he got helped from the safety car because I think Bottas pitted, because I remember Bottas being behind Sainz when I was looking. But I think AlphaTauri done a solid job this race. Alpine, I think it's just been a very average weekend, but they just got the car home to just a very impressive fifth in the constructors, I would say, considering their woes at the beginning of the season. I remember, I think maybe Spain saying they would finish behind the Aston Martins and AlphaTauri, so they've done a very solid job in order to improve across the season, and they'll be pushing for next season.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking away anything from the two AlphaTauri drivers, but they did both get, I think, somewhat lucky to be, maybe not Yuki, but definitely Gasly to be that high up thanks to the virtual safety cars and the safety car. They got lucky to be there, but I think they deserved it from what pace, especially Yuki, because he was amazing across the weekend to finally, well, not finally, but to actually out-qualify his teammate in Gasly through a normal qualifying session was a massive achievement for him. And to get P4, which is his best ever result in Formula One, is massive. And just shows, like Joe said, the improvements he's made. And I think how good his driving can actually be. So it'd be good to see what he can do next season and see if he can try and keep that consistency up and actually fight alongside his teammate with Gasly. But then, obviously Gasly just keeps doing it, getting into the top 5 or 6 somehow. And it just shows what kind of a driver he is. And I think he is too good for that seat, but I don't think he's going to go anywhere because I think he had his time, unfortunately, and it just didn't go his way. But then the Alpines, from the start of the season, I didn't see them finishing above AlphaTauri or even Aston Martin, but they have done, and it just shows that having the experience of Fernando and then Ocon working with Fernando and just improving himself as well just shows what that team can do. Because obviously they started off slowly. It was kind of like Ferrari. They started off slowly, and then towards the end of the season, they started to pull performances back and improve their car, which is great to see. And they definitely deserved to finish above AlphaTauri. But yeah, like Joe said, average weekend with both their cars finishing 8th and 9th. But it was enough to keep them ahead of the AlphaTauri. And then if we move to Aston Martin, a massively disappointing season for them, because they finished, I think, 4th last season when they were called Racing Point. But that obviously could have been to do with them copying the Mercedes car. But forget about that. I think the rules and regulations this season definitely didn't help their car. But the performances this weekend and for the last few races just hasn't been there. They're not doing qualifying well, and there's just no race pace during the race. So for them to finish 11th and 12th, I think was the best that they could probably do, which is disappointing. But yeah, I think that's all they could do.
Yeah, the Aston Martin are just rubbish. Like it's been a rubbish car this season. They should have been. They kind of got really unlucky with the regulations, but yeah, their car's just not been very competitive. They've had times when, of course, Vettel got 2 podiums, one taken away, but they had highs of that, and there was a point in Monaco where Vettel did really well, and they had a few good race results, and you think, oh, they're going to turn it around, but no, then it went back to normal, and they're being absolute rubbish. But let's move on to Alfa Romeo, because we don't really have much to say on it, really. Just so sad that both drivers' last races ends in DNF, I guess.
Yeah, as I've kind of said at the beginning, I think it's kind of shied away from Kimi's greatness. I would say Kimi Räikkönen's greatness in the way of the sport, and Giovinazzi, well, getting out of the sport in a way that I think would be respectful for him. By the way, I didn't go to the Aston Martin when we went to the midfield, but I'll give my view now. I think Vettel, I think, was was he stuck behind? Was he 13th? Where did he finish?
He finished 13th.
And
or 11th. 11th. Stroll was 13th. Vettel was 11th.
Yeah, I think looking at it, I think Vettel passed the safety car.
Yes.
I don't think Stroll did, and also Ricciardo. I think that for me, even though it was the last lap, you never know what happens between. Vettel could have got a point. Oh no, sorry, Stroll could have got a point, or Ricciardo, whatever. So yeah, that points out to how bad the controversy was. And yeah, Aston Martin will just go in with their James Bond reveal at probably next season. And actually, not wait. I just remembered something about that. This, if you look at it, the season started poorly from the Aston Martin when that show reveal happened, where I think Gemma, I thought the actress name messed up her lines. Yeah, well, that was a mess. I think that's when it went downhill for them.
Nice, Joe. Nice. Yeah, coming back to Alfa Romeo, it's a disappointing last race of both their drivers, because obviously they're replacing both of them next season. Not the way you want to see someone retire from the sport, DNF, and then someone who's leaving possibly not come back, DNF as well. Wasn't a very good weekend, but we'll talk more about it when we do the actual season review. But it hasn't been a good season for them either. They've managed to actually finish below Williams, so that shows us how poor their car was this season. But yeah, with regards to Abu Dhabi, one to forget, one to move on from, and just focus on next season.
Yeah, you mentioned Williams, another team with a double DNF. Do you have anything to say on them realistically? Because they're not leaving the sport. Russell, of course, is going to Mercedes, but King Latifi is taking the sport to new heights with Alex Albon next year. So anything to say on Williams this weekend, or not much?
Just a little bit of lack of consistency, I think. Their car worked well in some places and then definitely didn't work at all in other places.
Windy places.
Yeah, exactly. And then just this is a lack of consistency, because there was so many DNFs, I think, this season. Then for them to both, well, one crash and then one DNF, it's just not a great way to end the season, especially for Russell to move to Mercedes after a back-to-back DNF, to then go to Mercedes. It's not the way he wanted to probably move on, but nothing much you can do about it, because it's the car's fault, not his, except for Latifi, where he crashed. But yeah, I think next season should be a little bit more promising, more exciting.
Yeah, I think that Latifi had just been average. He had a very average season. But I think the more concerning thing is the fact that if this ruling stays, whatever the ruling is, he's going to be the decider of the championship, and be interesting response in the next season Silverstone, and how the public respond to him, even though it wasn't his fault, because any car can drop at any time. And then Russell leaving, I think he's kind of left no they left Williams as a man, I would say, as the old saying goes. He came into Williams as a boy, like learning his craft, and then suddenly it just excelled this season and has rightfully got the seat for Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton. And I'm going to put a asterisk behind that Hamilton, because we'll discuss it after this, and then Williams will progress, I think, and hopefully get in the midfield next season.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton hashtag. Yeah, it is. Yeah, let's hope Latifi doesn't get too much hate for the fact that
Sam, you know how British fans are.
Yeah, I know, but let's hope he doesn't get hated too much, because it wasn't actually his fault. Admittedly, he did cause the safety car, but as you said, they can drop it. Drivers can drop at any time. It was the FIA's incompetence which were at fault. At least George Russell wore a very smart suit this weekend and promoted a movie, even though his car ends up in a wall. So at least he's getting the paychecks. He's leaving a happy boy. I mean, admittedly, 2 DNFs his last races. Who cares? He's just getting a paycheck from the King's Man film, which is coming out, and he's going to Mercedes. Is
it going to be a crash?
He's happy. He can.
You didn't get the pun, did you? I
didn't hear it.
Is it going to be a crash?
Yeah, no, not very funny, Joe. I wouldn't go into comedy, mate. I'm not gonna lie. Let's move on to our final team, and we only had one driver. I thought that they'd get Pietro Fittipaldi in to replace Nikita, but obviously because of COVID, they didn't really have time because of all the. Pietro was probably just looking after his brother because of like the massive crash he had in Jeddah. But yeah, Schumacher finished 14th last. Not very interesting. And Mazepin had COVID. So what do you have to add? You can't be critical of Mazepin this week, Joe, because he literally did nothing wrong.
Oh, no.
We send our best wishes.
Feel sorry for him.
Yeah, we send our best wishes.
Honestly, I think at the beginning of the season, obviously with the I forgot what happened. I think it was like this. Is it not sexual, whatever, allegations and that? I think kind of put a dampen on his ability, and obviously with the Haas being the Haas, I kind of the money. I honestly, you got to be positive in a way that the Haas is gone. It can't go any lower. The only way is up for them, and I can't say anything else about Mazepin in the way that hopefully he gets well soon, and just fine for next season. And then Mick Schumacher, I honestly hope he gets a decent car, because he does have skill, he just can't use it, and hopefully he can actually race wheel to wheel and not have basically a year just not knowing, because you've just been alone, just doing a whole year of testing.
Yeah. Joe's pretty much summed it up. But obviously, get well soon to Mazepin. No one wants to see that, or to anyone to have COVID. But you mentioned, I think, Piastri there. Why don't they just knock on Aston Martin's door and say, "Hey, can we borrow an eco?" Because he was there all weekend. Just chuck him in our car. He's not going to go anywhere because the car's so bad anyway. But why not? Then they can have a driver at least. But obviously, just would have been a bit of fun. But obviously, didn't happen. But with Schumacher, I thought it didn't look like he was going to finish last. To be fair, he was racing the Latifi quite well and stayed in front of him. So they might not even come last if Latifi managed to not bin it. But I think it was an all right end to the season for Schumacher, but obviously not for the other side. But not really much more you can add to that.
Yeah, Fittipaldi, not Piastri. Piastri's the winner of Formula 2.
Oh, who cares?
I think I
was trying to say Pietro instead of Piastri, his first name.
Yeah, we'll say that you meant that, Josh. We'll say that. But let's move on to driver of the day. There are definitely some candidates. There's a lot of good drivers. who have you guys gone for? Because it's an interesting one. Last one of the season, so make it special.
Yeah, I said mine earlier with Carlos Sainz, and I've gone for a Ferrari. Yes, I have, but he deserved it to get on the podium after all that lot and celebrate with Verstappen. Was a good achievement and a good race result, and he just drove flawlessly, no mistakes, got the start perfectly, jumped quite a few people because he was behind both Lando and Perez, so to jump them both, or was it both of them, or not Perez, but
he started 7th, so he jumped a lot of people.
Jumped a lot, so a great start, and then I thought he started 5th.
Yeah, I'm looking at Leclerc. Yeah, he started 5th. He jumped Lando and Perez, though. Yeah,
great start, and then just to hold them both off and just round that season up with the podium, which is just a great way to end the season.
Yeah, I honestly think you can give it to probably 5 drivers, but obviously I'm going to give it to Hamilton, but I'm also going to give it some of it to Max as well, as in it's honestly, as in, again, I don't know why. Well, the one thing I find annoying is always goes back to the FIA, but if it didn't, as in, we're witnessing probably the 2 greatest drivers of F1 of all time, as in Hamilton just with the pure speed, and then obviously Max, and then they're like, I think at one point they were like a second fast, or like half a second faster than the rest of the field. And yes, that's due to their card, but then obviously you had Perez, you had Bottas. So yeah, I think Max and Lewis was a level above. And again, if it is Hamilton's last season, it's will people use it in a very salty manner? Oh, he's just running away from a fight. But yeah, I honestly do believe that he's can leave the sport in dignity, even though he hasn't won that 8th world title.
Yeah, for me, driver of the day is Yuki Tsunoda. I really like him as a driver. I think he's great. He's like Max when he entered the sport in the first year, in the fact that he was very raw, but he had so much talent. And his qualifying was excellent, finished P8. He was P4 at one point, but he had the lap deleted for getting a bit out of shape, literally around the last corner. So really unlucky there. But beat Gasly by 4 positions in qualifying, then starting 8th, finishing 4th. He may have got some luck like during the safety cars and all of that. He may have got luck there, but you've got to be there to get lucky. He had to put himself in that position. In terms of his season, he has started like very. He's such a raw driver in the terms of you can see the talent. He has so much talent, but he bends it. He's just, as the season goes on, he's got more and more mature. Albon has helped him. He attributes some of that progression to Albon and helping him to get better. And I think next season it'll be very interesting to see how he does, because he has so much talent. And if/when he refines that, I think he could be fighting at the top of the order, because he has enormous talent. It's just he needs to refine it. And he was sensational today, and I'm really happy for him. But Joe, you've been saying this whole podcast, we're going to talk about at the end, is Hamilton going to retire? It's an interesting one, because after the race today, he did seem unsure in his interview about next season. He's currently level on 7 world titles. If this result stands, I don't really know what's going to happen, but do you guys think he will retire because of he's given everything, he doesn't get any better, or do you think that he's going to stay in the sport and fight for an 8th?
I don't know. What do you think, Josh?
I think, from my personal opinion, I think if he does retire, I think it'd be more down to the fact that he had a difficult season with the fact that he had long COVID. I think that has definitely shown how much he struggled this season with like physically and probably not mentally, but definitely physically as a result of long COVID. And I think if he feels like he's still suffering from that, I think that'll be one of the main reasons as to why he retires if he does. I don't think he should do, because he's proven that he can still win races and compete for titles, and he probably could get an 8th, depending on how well everyone else's cars are made next season. But yeah, like I said, I think if he does decide to retire, I think it'll be mainly down due to the fact that he's had or still got long COVID.
Part of me, I remember Damon Hill saying it's quite interesting that Mercedes are in a number of categories around the world. I don't think they're anywhere in like NASCAR or IndyCar, but part of me, I think it'd be a bit abrupt, but part of me does think that Mercedes could just wipe it. Say, all right, if you're not playing by your own rules, we'll just leave. And then Hamilton would retire. I see that being a possibility. I see being a possibility, as Josh said, because of long COVID, and I don't think people really take into account that because they don't really see long COVID as a problem when it can affect you for like a number of months. I think it affected footballers for like, I think 5 months. So it does take a long time to get over. And obviously F1 is a year sport, not in the football terms, like 6 months. So yeah, that could be and then just him just saying, I don't want to race if it's not fair, which then I can do completely understand, because at the moment the FIA have got rules that you would consider 2 years, or maybe, again, this is going back to Charlie Whiting sadly passing away, that it hasn't been consistent. Before then, you never got a controversial decision. There's been heated moments between Rosberg and Hamilton. Yes, that was internally between Mercedes, but Charlie Whiting could have hold that pressure. So yeah, that could be just a possibility, to just sick of the FIA rulings. And then there's probably a fourth possibility, which is not, I would say, I hope it is the possibility that he's just tired and just wants to focus on in his inclusivity what's it called, Black Lives Matter movement, in promoting, Hamilton Foundation, not Black Lives Matter movement, but Hamilton Foundation, in including, just trying to promote more females and ethnic minorities into the sport. That's, for me, I hope is the possibility, is the choice that Hamilton makes if he does retire.
To be honest, I don't think this is the last we'll see of him. I think we'll see him fight for an 8th if he doesn't get awarded it in the courts or wherever this goes. This episode was a controversial one. This race was a controversial one. This isn't the last we'll hear of it. And I'm very fascinated to see what happens. But I think that wraps up our podcast, talking about all that happened at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It was our last review of the season. If you've watched till now, thank you. It was a long one. There's a lot to talk about. Remember to like, subscribe, download, whatever you need to do. Comment below what you think is going to happen. And we're going to bring you a season review with all 5 of us on. That is the hope anyway. We'll see how that goes. But the hope is to have all 5 of us talking about a season review soon. But yeah, thank you for listening and watching, and we will see you then. Thank you.